in my view, one of the major issues that we're going to face over the next, I don't know, 50 years or something like that is energy. On a global scale, between now and say 2050, we're going to, if we want to maintain roughly the same standard of living, we're going to need to produce about 3 times the amount of energy then as we do right now. So think of every source of energy on the planet, oil, coal, whatever, and triple it in the next 40 some odd years. And that's the scale of that problem is something that's really hard to grasp. So when you think about solving the energy problem, and again, this is all predicated by the notion that if we continue to burn fossil fuels, it is going to have an economic or a climate impact on the climate. So we're not going to run out of fossil fuels in general anytime soon. Oil is probably going to peak, maybe peaking now, but oil is certainly going to run out first. Natural gas, based on sort of mid-90s consumption rates, you're looking at hundreds of years worth of natural gas, and coal, you're looking at 2,000 years worth. So the notion that fossil fuels are going to disappear anytime soon is not correct. The problem is that coal, which is the most abundant, and the United States actually has the largest coal reserves in the world, is the dirtiest fuel. What we have to do is find renewable or non-fossil fuel intensive or non-carbon intensive options to replace it, and so that means you've got to produce it at an economically viable level, right? Because when push comes to shove, if someone says, well, you can either trash the environment in 20 years or you don't get to have heat this winter, people are going to naturally choose to not worry about the environment. So as scientists, we need to come up with scientifically viable alternatives to fossil fuels. The scope of renewable options includes biomass, it includes wind, includes geothermal, nuclear, hydroelectric, and solar are the main ones. You can fairly easily go through and calculate how much energy you can possibly get. Each of the options, with the exception of solar, have scalability issues. Like nuclear power is a great example. The average nuclear power plant produces on the order of 1 to 2 gigawatts. So that's 10 to the 9th watts. That's joules per second. So if you were to build 8,000 of those, you've got about 8 terawatts. Well, that makes a very small but noticeable dent in the total energy problem we're going to have in 50 years. But there are only about 500 or 600 nuclear power plants worldwide today. You'd have to build a new nuclear power plant every day and a half or so for the next 40 years to get 8,000 nuclear power plants. And even if you did that, you'd exhaust the terrestrial uranium sources in 10 years. Right? So all of these options have scalability problems. They should all be part of the overall energy mix, but none of them are silver bullet. The only thing that's really scalable is solar. I mean, there's as much energy hitting the Earth's surface in a single day as mankind currently consumes in a year. Right? Now, obviously, we can't access all that energy, but it represents an enormous resource. And nature figured that out a long time ago because nature uses sunlight and water as its 2 primary sources of energy. The science to get to that point is incredibly difficult, and there are a lot of really talented people around the world working on various aspects of that problem. The stuff that we've been supported by recently by NSF through the ARA money, and as well as other research from my group from the Department of Energy, are both looking at different aspects of how to make solar energy more efficient, but do so from the perspective of Earth-abundant materials so that we can think about scalability. So the research that we do addresses basic science questions in 2 ways. And for 2 reasons. One, as a mechanism to solve these scientific questions, but also as a vehicle for training the next generation of scientists, because that's really what my graduate students are. So it's sort of both those things that we focus on. Hopefully when we actually resolve the scientific questions, then industry or whatever can then take the next step and develop the technology from the science that we've resolved.